Maybe just to get out the tunes I had in 1965. Were you held down by the other fellas? Well, very subtly, yes.
Maybe,
Well, yeah.
maybe, yeah.
Yeah. I wonder
It was
why.
well, because over the years, I had such just to get out the tunes I had in 1965.
Were you held down by the other fellas?
Well, very subtly, yes.
There is a big shock about George Harrison, the so-called quiet Beatle. While he was known for his spiritual outlook and deep appreciation for music, he was also brutally honest, sometimes to the point of outright dismissal. And unlike his former bandmates Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr, who often kept their critiques diplomatic, Harrison didn't shy away from calling out artists he didn't respect. You said at one stage that the Beatles were a curse as far as you were concerned. What you're saying is the same thing right now.
It's a lot to deal with. And that's the thing, the Beatles sort of did haunt a lot of us for years, and still do.
So who made the list of musicians George Harrison disliked the most? Let's dive into his most scathing critiques. 1. Neil Young. During a 1992 conversation with Bob Geldof, George Harrison did not hold back when discussing his opinion of Neil Young. When asked about Young's music, he responded with characteristic frankness, saying, "I hate it. Yeah, I can't stand it. I'm not a Young fan." His criticism didn't stop there. He went on to specifically call out Young's guitar playing, dismissing it as amateurish and unrefined. Harrison, who had performed alongside some of the greatest musicians in rock history, found Young's style baffling, even comical. He recounted an experience performing on the same bill as Young, describing a moment when he and Eric Clapton exchanged looks of disbelief during Young's guitar solo. "I hate his playing. It's good for a laugh. We did the show with him. I saw it from the other side of the stage and looked around. I looked at Eric Clapton and said, 'What's going on?' He did the solo in the middle. Then he kind of looked at me like, 'Don't look at me. It's not me.'" His reaction highlights just how bewildered he was by Young's approach to the guitar, which he seemed to consider chaotic and unskilled. One song that particularly drew Harrison's ire was Young's "Around the World." When asked about the song, he didn't sugarcoat his response, bluntly stating, "I can't stand it." Given Young's reputation for experimental and sometimes unconventional musical choices, it's possible that Harrison found his sound too abrasive or unpolished compared to the refined songwriting and melodic craftsmanship of the Beatles. Despite Harrison's clear disdain, the feeling wasn't mutual. Neil Young had immense respect for the Beatles and often spoke about how they influenced his own musical career. Young, who emerged in the 1960s as a key figure in folk rock and later became one of the defining voices of classic rock, had long admired the innovation and songwriting prowess of the Beatles. He never retaliated against Harrison's harsh words, instead continuing to express his admiration for the legendary band. Harrison's opinion of Young highlights a broader debate among music fans about Young's guitar style. Many critics and listeners have either loved or hated Young's playing, which is often described as raw, emotional, and heavily reliant on distortion. While some admire its authenticity and expressive nature, others, like Harrison, find it unpolished and grating, too. Oasis. Many musicians from the classic rock era have voiced their distaste for Oasis, but few criticisms were as cutting as those from George Harrison. As a former member of the Beatles, the band Oasis revered the most, Harrison's words carried significant weight. The Beatles were a defining influence on Noel Gallagher, Oasis's principal songwriter, who often spoke of his admiration for their music and legacy. However, admiration was not mutual. In 1996, Harrison dismissed Oasis with brutal honesty, delivering a critique that infuriated Liam Gallagher. At the time, Oasis was at the peak of their success, having released What's the Story Morning Glory, an album that catapulted them to international fame. They were widely hailed as the heirs to British rock, often compared to the Beatles due to their massive popularity, strong melodies, and the Gallagher brothers' outspoken attitudes. But Harrison, never one to hold back his true feelings, made it clear that he was unimpressed. Speaking about Oasis's music, he said, "The music lacks depth, and the singer, Liam, is a pain. The rest of the band don't mean anything." This remark was a direct jab at Oasis's songwriting and musicianship, which Harrison clearly found lacking. While Oasis had earned a reputation for their swagger and anthemic choruses, Harrison's words suggested he saw them as superficial, missing the complexity and artistry that define truly great music. His dismissal of Liam Gallagher as a pain was particularly scathing, implying that the frontman's brash, controversial personality overshadowed whatever musical merit the band had. For Liam Gallagher, this was an unforgivable insult. Known for his volatile temper and confrontational nature, he did not take criticism lightly, especially from a legendary figure like Harrison. Rather than responding with diplomacy, Liam reacted in typical fashion, with aggression. He reportedly threatened to sock Harrison, making it clear that he had no respect for the older musician's opinion. This response only reinforced the very image that Harrison had criticized. Liam as an unfiltered, hot-headed rock star, more concerned with attitude than artistry. Harrison's critique wasn't just a personal attack. It reflected a broader sentiment among some classic rock veterans who saw Oasis as derivative rather than innovative. While the Gallagher brothers frequently cited the Beatles as their greatest influence, some felt that Oasis borrowed too much from their predecessors without adding anything new. Despite Harrison's harsh words, Oasis continued to thrive in the late 1990s, with Noel Gallagher maintaining his admiration for the Beatles. He often spoke about how their songwriting shaped his approach to music, and despite the criticism, he never engaged in the same kind of personal feud that his brother did. Liam, on the other hand, remained defiant, continuing to position himself as an unapologetic rock star who didn't care what anyone thought, including former Beatles. 3. Elton John. Despite holding personal respect for Elton John, George Harrison never hesitated to share his honest opinion about music, even when it meant criticizing some of the most beloved artists of his time. While he acknowledged John's immense success and talent, he found his music lacking in originality and depth. Harrison, who had spent his career pushing musical boundaries with the Beatles and later as a solo artist, felt that John's work relied too heavily on familiar formulas rather than offering something truly innovative. In a 1976 interview with India Today, Harrison made his stance clear. He explained that while he recognized John's skill as a performer and songwriter, he did not personally connect with his music. Instead, Harrison expressed a strong preference for the music of early rock and roll pioneers who had shaped the Beatles' sound, artists like Chuck Berry, Little Richard, and Carl Perkins. Harrison elaborated on this point by describing John's music as formulaic and repetitive, suggesting that while it was commercially successful, it lacked the artistic depth he valued. This assessment likely stemmed from Harrison's belief that music should evolve and challenge both the artist and the listener. He had spent much of his career seeking spiritual and musical growth, incorporating Indian classical music, complex compositions, and deeply personal lyrics into his work. In contrast, he felt that John's songs, while catchy and expertly crafted, followed predictable structures and failed to explore new musical landscapes. However, it's important to note that Harrison's critique was not rooted in personal dislike. Unlike some musicians whom he openly dismissed, such as Neil Young or Oasis, Harrison maintained a level of respect for John as a person and as an entertainer. He simply did not find his music compelling. Despite this difference in musical taste, the two artists never engaged in a public feud. John, known for his thick skin and ability to brush off criticism, never seemed to take offense at Harrison's remarks. The Hollies. Despite the Beatles and the Hollies originating from the Merseyside area, their relationship was far from that of close musical allies. Instead of standing together as hometown heroes, their rivalry took on the intensity of two competing football teams. At the heart of this discord was the Hollies' 1965 cover of George Harrison's "If I Needed Someone," a song originally written for Rubber Soul. Rather than feeling honored by the cover, Harrison took great offense, believing that the Hollies had fundamentally misunderstood and mishandled his song. The controversy began when the Hollies chose "If I Needed Someone" as their latest single, releasing it on the very same day Rubber Soul hit the shelves in December 1965. At the time, the Hollies were among Britain's most successful pop groups, known for their impeccable vocal harmonies and polished production style. However, their smooth, highly commercial sound was a stark contrast to the increasingly experimental direction the Beatles were pursuing. The conflict came to a head when journalist Alan Smith, NME, asked Harrison about the Hollies version. Harrison responded sharply, "Tell people that I didn't write it for the Hollies. It's called If I Needed Someone, and they've done it as their new single. But their version is not my kind of music. I think it's rubbish the way they've done it. They've spoiled it." His criticism extended beyond just this one track. He took a broader swipe at the Hollies' overall approach to music. The Hollies are all right musically, but the way they do their records, they sound like session men who just got together in a studio without ever seeing each other. This was a particularly cutting remark, implying that the Hollies lacked the chemistry and authenticity that the Beatles had carefully cultivated. To Harrison, their music sounded too calculated, too mechanical, devoid of the organic creative energy that made a band truly great. The Bee Gees' one genre that George Harrison had little time for was disco, which exploded in popularity in the late 1970s. And since no group was more synonymous with disco than the Bee Gees, they inevitably became a target of his criticism. Harrison, who valued authenticity, depth, and spiritual expression in music, saw disco as overly commercialized and lacking the artistic substance he cherished. Harrison's distaste for disco likely stemmed from his lifelong preference for music that conveyed deep emotion and originality. He had grown up listening to early rock and roll, Indian classical music, and folk traditions, all of which influenced his work with the Beatles and as a solo artist. By contrast, he viewed disco as manufactured, shallow, and designed solely for mass market appeal. The Bee Gees, as the defining act of the disco era, embodied many of the aspects of popular music that Harrison disliked. While the Gibb brothers had started their career in the 1960s as a soft rock and Baroque pop group, their reinvention as disco superstars in the mid-1970s propelled them to unprecedented fame. Songs like Stayin' Alive, Night Fever, and You Should Be Dancing became anthems of the decade. But for Harrison, this transformation represented everything wrong with the direction of popular music. He felt that disco, with its repetitive beats and heavily produced arrangements, was devoid of the depth and meaning he cherished in songwriting. Unlike the music he respected, which often conveyed profound emotions or spiritual revelations, disco seemed to be more about image, danceability, and mainstream appeal. Final thoughts. George Harrison's critiques were never about personal vendettas. They reflected his unwavering belief that music should be more than just entertainment. It should be an expression of something deeper, something real. Whether you agree with his opinions or not, his honesty and dedication to artistic integrity remain undeniable. What do you think about the musicians George Harrison especially hated? Leave us your comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one. Goodbye.